Hello students, this is your English lesson. Today we are going to read Unit 11, The Hitch-Hiker from Oxford Model English Book 7. So we start our lesson. First of all, I'll tell you what is the meaning of hitchhiker. Students, hitchhiker means someone who travels by getting free rides in someone else's vehicle. This is page number 128. Words to know. Clink, slang, prison. Copper, slang, a policeman. Cost, a tidy packet. Cost, a lot of money. Crummy, useless. Despise, hate, feel scorn for. Dual carriageway, two roads side by side, each for one-way traffic. 18 carat. Carat is a measure of purity of gold, pure gold being 24 carats. Elegant, graceful, fished, searched about for. Flabbergasted, astonished, greatly surprised. Flat out at top speed. For a spell, for a period of time. Governor. Governor slang used instead of sir or for one's employer or even for one's father. Lousy. Slang disgustingly bad. Nick. Slang steal. All carrier. Hod carrier. Odd carrier. Hod carrier. The meaning is explained by the hitchhiker. Open her up. Open her up. Let the car go at top speed. Sit tight and keep mum. Sit still and keep quiet. Solemnly, seriously, with dignity and ceremony. Solicitor, a lawyer. That's on it. This section is going to cause trouble. Vulgar, impolite, rude, dirty. Whooping, whooping, big, hefty. I had a new car. It was an exciting toy, a big BMW 3.3 Li long wheelbase fuel injection. It had a top speed of 129 mph and terrific acceleration. Acceleration rate at which velocity changes with time in terms of both speed and direction. The body was pale blue. The seats inside were darker blue and they were made of genuine soft leather. The windows were electrically operated and so was the sunroof. The powerful engine growled and grunted impatiently at slow speeds. Grunted make a low, short, guttural sound. But at 60 miles an hour it began to pour with pleasure. I was driving up to London by myself. It was a lovely June day. I was whispering along at 70 miles an hour, leaning back comfortably in my seat. Ahead of me, I saw a man thumbing a lift. I brought the car to a stop beside him. I always stopped for hitchhikers. I knew just how it used to feel to be standing on the side of a country road watching the cars go by. I hated the drivers for pretending they didn't see me, especially the ones in big cars with three empty seats. The hitchhiker said, "Going to London? Guana?" "Yes," I said, "jump in." He got in, and I drove on. He was a small, ratty-faced man with grey teeth. Ratty-faced, irritable, annoyed. His eyes were dark and quick and clever, like a rat's eyes, and his ears were slightly pointed at the top. He had a cloth cap on his head, and he was wearing a greyish-coloured jacket with enormous pockets. "What part of London are you headed for?" I asked him. "I'm going right through London," he said. "I'm going to Epsom, Epsom for the race." "I wish I were going with you," I said. "I love betting on horses." "I never bet on horses," he said. "I don't even watch 'em run." That's a stupid, silly business. Then why do you go? I asked. He didn't seem to like that question. His little ratty face went absolutely blank and he sat there staring straight ahead at the road, saying nothing. I expect you help to work the betting machines or something like that, I said. That's ever sillier, he answered. Any fool could do that. There was a long silence. I decided not to question him anymore. I remembered how irritated I used to get in my hitchhiking days when drivers kept asking me questions. I used to hate it. I'm sorry, I said. The trouble is, I'm a writer, and most writers are terribly noisy. You write books? He asked. Yes, writing books is okay, he said. It's what I call a skilled trade. I'm in a skilled trade too. The folks I despise is them. Despise? To feel a strong dislike for someone or something that spend all their lives doing crummy old routine jobs. Crummy, dirty, unpleasant, or of poor quality, with no skill in M at all. You see what I mean? What makes you think that I'm any good at my job? I asked. There's an awful lot of bad writers around. You wouldn't be driving about in a car like this if you weren't no good at all, he answered. It must have cost a tidy packet. This little job, what can she do flat out? 129 miles an hour, I told him. Open her up then and prove it, he said. Go on, Governor, open her right up. We came out of a roundabout onto the dual carriageway and I pressed my foot down on the accelerator. The big car leapt forward as though she'd being stung. In 10 seconds or so, we were doing 90. Lovely, he cried. Beautiful. Keep going. I had the accelerator jammed right down against the floor and I held it there, jammed, stuck, and unable to move. 100, he shouted. 110, 115. Go on. Don't slake off. Slake to work less hard or to be less than is usual or necessary. Go on, get her up to 129. At that moment, I heard the scream of a police siren, and then a policeman on a motorcycle loomed up alongside us on the inside lane and went past us and raised a hand for us to stop. Oh, my scented aunt, I said, that's on it. A policeman must have been doing about 130 when he passed us, and he took plenty of time slowing down. Finally, he pulled into the side of the road, and I pulled in behind him. The policeman got off his motorcycle and landed the machine sideways onto its prop stand. Then he took off his gloves and placed them carefully on the seat. He was in no hurry now. He had us where he wanted us and he knew it. This is real trouble, I said. I don't like it one bit. Don't talk to am any more than is necessary. You understand? My companion said. Just sit tight and keep mum. Like an executioner. Executioner? One who executes, especially one who puts to death. Approaching his victim, the policeman came strolling slowly towards us. We sat there like guilty schoolboys waiting for him to arrive. Watch out for this man, my passenger whispered. Ill looks mean as the devil. The policeman came round to my open window and placed one beating hand on the sill. What's the hurry? He said. No hurry, officer, I answered. In that case, he said, you have got yourself into a nasty mess, haven't you? Do you know what the speed limit is in this country? 70, I said. And do you mind telling me exactly what speed you were doing just now? I shrugged and didn't say anything. When he spoke next, he raised his voice so loud that I jumped. 120 miles per hour. He barked. That's 50 miles an hour over the limit. He turned his head and stared hard at my passenger. And who are you? He asked sharply. Oh, I done something wrong? My passenger asked. His voice was so soft and oily as hair cream. That's more than likely, the policeman answered. Anyway, you are a witness. I'll deal with you in a minute. Driving license? He snapped, holding out his hand. I gave him my driving license. He unbuttoned the left hand breast pocket of his tunic and brought out the dreaded book of tickets. Carefully, he copied the name and address from my license. Then he gave it back to me. He strolled round to the front of the car and read the number from the number plate and wrote that down as well. He filled in the date, the time, and the details of my offense. Then he tore out the top copy of the ticket. But before handing it to me, he checked that all the information had come through clearly on his own carbon copy. Finally, he replaced the book in his tunic pocket and fastened the button. Now you, he said to my passenger, and he walked around to the other side of the car. From the other breast pocket, he produced a small black notebook. Name, he snapped. Michael Fish, my passenger said. Address 14 Windsor Lane, Luton. Show me something to prove this is your real name and address. The policeman said. My passenger fished in his pockets and came out with a driving license of his own. The policeman checked the name and address and handed it back to him. What's your job? He asked sharply. I am an oil carrier. Oh, what? An oil carrier. Spell it. HODCA. That'll do. And what's a hod carrier? May I ask? An hod carrier officer is a person who carries the cement up the ladder to the bricklayer, and the hood is what air carries it in. It's got a long handle, and on the top you have got two bits of wood set at an angle. All right, the policeman wrote all this down in the black notebook. Then he returned the book to its pocket and did up the button. When I get back to the station, I am going to do a little checking up on you, he said to my passenger. Me? What have I done wrong? The rat faced man asked. I don't like your face, that's all, the policeman said, and we just might have a picture of it somewhere in our files. He strolled round the car and returned to my window. I suppose you know you are in serious trouble, he said to me. Yes, officer. You won't be driving this fancy car of yours again for a very long time. I hope they lock up you for a spell too. You mean prison? I asked, alarmed. Absolutely, he said, smacking his lips. In the clink behind the bars, along with all the other criminals who break the law, and a hefty fine into a bargain. Nobody will be more pleased about that than me. I'll see you in court, both of you. You will be getting a summons to appear. He turned away and walked over to his motorcycle. He flipped the prop stand back into position with his foot and swung his leg over the saddle. Then he kicked the starter and rode off up the road out of sight. Phew, I gasped. That's done it. We was caught, my passenger said. We was caught, good and proper. I was caught, you mean? That's right, he said. What are you going to do now, Governor? I'm going straight up to London to talk to my solicitor. I said. I started the car and drove on. You mustn't believe what he said to see to you about going to prison, my passenger said. They don't put nobody in the clique just for speeding. Are you sure of that? I asked. I'm positive, he answered. They can take your license away and they can give you a whooping big fine, but that'll be the end of it. I felt tremendously relieved. By the way, I said, why did you lie to him? Who? Me? He said. What makes you think I lied? You told him you were an unemployed hod carrier, but you told me you were in a highly skilled trade. So I am, he said, but it don't pay to tell everything to a cooper. So what do you do? I asked him. Is it something you are ashamed of? Ashamed? He cried. Me? Ashamed of my job? Then why won't you tell me? You writers really in noisy parkers, aren't you? He said. And you aren't going to be happy, I don't think, until you have found out exactly what the answer is. I kept quiet and stared at the road ahead. I am in a very peculiar trade, he said. I waited for him to go on. That's why I has to be extra careful. Oh, I am talking to you, see. How am I to know, for instance, you are not another cooper in plain clothes? Do I look like a cooper? No, he said, you don't, and you aren't. Any fool could tell that. He took from his pocket a tin of tobacco and a packet of cigarette papers and started to roll a cigarette. I was watching him out of the corner of one eye, and the speed with which he performed this rather difficult operation was incredible. I have never seen anyone roll a cigarette as fast as that, I said. He sat back and smiled. It pleased him very much that I had noticed how quickly he could roll a cigarette. You want to know what makes me able to do it? He asked. Go on then. It's because I have got fantastic fingers. These fingers of mine, he said, holding up both hands high in front of him, are quicker and cleverer than the fingers of the best piano player in the world. I glanced at his fingers. They were so beautifully shaped, so slim and long and elegant. They didn't seem to belong to the rest of him at all. They looked more like the fingers of a brain surgeon or a watchmaker. My job, he went on, is 100 times more difficult than playing the piano. Any fool can learn to do that, but there's not one person in 10 million can learn to do what I do. How about that? Amazing, I said. You are done. You are done, right? It's amazing, he said. I was taking the car along slowly now to make quite sure I wasn't stopped again. Suddenly, my passenger was holding up a black leather belt in his hand. Ever seen this before? He asked. The belt had a brass buckle of unusual design. Hey, I said, that's mine, isn't it? It is mine. I reached down and felt for my belt. It was gone. You mean you took it off me while we have been driving along? I asked, flabbergasted. Flabbergasted. He nodded, watching me all the time with those little black ratty eyes. That's impossible, I said. Have seen you doing it. Oh, but you didn't, did you? He said, triumphant. Triumphant. He dropped the belt on his lap, and now all at once there was a brown shoelace dangling from his fingers. And what about this then? He exclaimed, waving the shoelace. Anyone around are missing a shoelace? I glanced down at my shoes. The lace of one of them was missing. Good grief, I said. How did you do that? I never saw you bending down. You never saw nothing, he said proudly. And you know why? Yes, I said, because you have got fantastic fingers. Exactly right, he cried. He sat back and smiled. He knew he had impressed me greatly with those two tricks. I don't want to be late, he said. What time is it? There's a clock in front of you, I told him. I don't trust car clocks, he said. What does your watch say? I hitched up my sleeve to look at the watch on my wrist. It wasn't there. He held out his hand, and there was my watch lying in his palm. Nice bit of stuff, this, he said. Superior quality. 18 karat gold. Easy to sell. It's never any trouble getting rid of quality goods. I'd like it back if you don't mind, I said rather huffily. He placed the watch carefully on the leather tray in front of him. I wouldn't nick anything from you, Gwarner, he said. You are my pal. You are giving me a lift. I'm glad to hear it, I said. All I'm doing is answering your questions, he went on. You asked me what I did for a living, and I'm showing you. So you are a pickpocket? I said. I don't like that word, he answered. It's a vulgar word. Pickpockets are coarse and vulgar people. They lift money from blind old ladies. What do you call yourself then? Me? I'm a fingersmith. I am a professional fingersmith. He spoke the word solemnly and proudly. I have never heard that word before, I said. Did you invent it? Of course. I didn't invent it, he replied. You have heard of a goldsmith and a silversmith. For instance, they are experts with gold and silver. I am an expert with my fingers, so I am a fingersmith. And that's why you go to the races? Race meetings are good, he said. You just stand around after the race, watching for the lucky ones to draw their money. And when you see someone collecting a big bundle of notes, you simply follows after. I am and helps yourself. But I never takes nothing from a loser, nor from poor people neither. I only go after the winners and the rich. That's very thoughtful of you, I said. We drove on for a while without talking. That policeman's going to check up on you pretty thoroughly, I said. Doesn't that worry you a bit? Nobody's checking up on me, he said. Of course they are. He has got your name and address written down most carefully in his black book. The man gave me another of his sly, ratty little smile. Ah, he said, so he has, but I'll bet he ain't got it all written down in his memory as well. What's memory got to do with it? I asked. It's written down in his book, isn't it? Yes, Guana, it is, but the trouble is, he is lost both books, the one with my name in it and the one with yours. In the long, delicate fingers of his right hand, the man was holding up in triumph the two books he had taken from the policeman's pockets. Comprehension answered the following questions. A. Which words in the first paragraph of the story tell us that the owner of the car is rich? Answer. The words in the first paragraph of the story that tell us that the owner of the car is rich are new car. We could also the key description of that car which clearly convey that it must have been an expression or an expressive purchase. Big BMW, genuine soft leather, electrically operated, windows and sunroof. B. Why does the driver stop? B. Why does the driver stop for the hitchhiker? Answer. The driver stops for the hitchhiker because he always stopped for hitchhikers because he used to hitchhike himself and hated it when drivers pretended not to see him. C. How does the driver describe the hitchhiker? Answer. He was a small, ratty faced man with grey teeth. His eyes were dark and quick and clever, like a rat's eyes, and his ears were slightly pointed at the top. He had a cloth cap on his head, and he was wearing a greyish colored jacket with enormous pockets. D. Why does the driver stop questioning the hitchhiker? Answer. The driver stops questioning the hitchhiker because he remembered how irritated he used to get in his hitchhiking days when drivers kept asking him questions. He used to hate it. E. What reason does the hitchhiker give for thinking that the driver was a good writer? Answer. The hitchhiker's reason for thinking that the driver was a good writer was that he was driving an expensive car that he would not be able to afford if he was not successful in his work. F. How does the hitchhiker manage to coax the driver into driving faster? Answer. The hitchhiker manages to coax the driver into driving faster by asking what she can do flat out and then encouraging him to prove that it could usually go at 129 mph. G. Why is the hitchhiker reluctant to reveal his profession? Answer. The hitchhiker was reluctant to reveal his profession in case the writer was a plain clothes police officer. H. Why does the policeman decide to question the hitchhiker too? Answer. The policeman decided to question the hitchhiker too because he was a witness. I. How did the fingersmith first impress the driver with his skill? Answer. The fingersmith first impressed the driver with his skill at rolling a cigarette very quickly. J. Why did the hitchhiker call himself a fingersmith? Answer. The hitchhiker called himself a fingersmith because he felt that the word pickpocket was vulgar. Also, as he was an expert, a professional with his fingers, like goldsmiths and silversmiths or experts at working with gold and silver, he felt that the term fingersmith was more appropriate. K. Describe how the fingersmith demonstrates his skill to the driver. Answer. The fingersmith demonstrates his skill to the driver by removing the driver's belt, shoelace, and wristwatch without his noticing. To answer the following questions with reference to context, A. And you aren't going to be happy, I don't think, until you have found out exactly what the answer is. 1. Who is the speaker? Answer. The hitchhiker. 2. What was the question to which the speaker refers? Answer. The writer asked him what his job was, and when he did not answer, he asked if he was ashamed of his job. 3. Did the speaker eventually answer the question? How did he go about doing this? Answer. Yes, he went about answering the question by demonstrating his skills. B. They were so beautifully shaped, so slim and long and elegant. 1. What is being referred to? Answer. The hitchhiker's fingers. 2. In what way was this feature odd? This feature odd. Answer. They did not seem to belong to the rest of him. 3. Why was it appropriate that they were shaped thus? Answer. They were amazing, quicker, and cleverer than the fingers of the best piano players in the world. B. Working with words. 1. What are the abbreviations for the following? Meter, M, miles per hour, mph, kilometer, km, director, dir, doctor, dr, Mr, mr, avenue, ave, September, sept, Monday, mon, assistant, ASST, certificate, CERT, kilogram, kg, professor, prof, society, SOC. 2. Rewrite the following words inserting the missing letters S which are indicated by the apostrophe. Governor, governor, I am, writer, writing, writing, must have, her, her, she will, what's have, using him, him, he, you have, would, hood carrier, who. Similes. By using a comparison in the form of a simile, try to make the following more vivid. A car overtaking other vehicles very fast. A car overtaking other vehicles like the wind. B. A dry, waterless tank in the summer. So, a tank as dry as desert in the summer. C. A leafless tree in the summer. A tree like featherless bird in the summer. D. A person's very bad handwriting. A person's handwriting looks like caterpillar crawling in the paper. E. A long snake traveling through the grass. A long snake traveling like a train. F. An old man smoking his pipe. Spelling. Add er, ed or ing to the following words. Model, modeled, modeling. Signal, signaled, signaling. Wheel, wheeled, wheeling. Shovel, shoveled, shoveler. Label, labeled, labeling. Enamel, enameled, enameling. Dial, dialed, dialing. Cool, cooled, cooling. Rival, rivaled, rivaling. Keel, keel, keeling. Cancel, cancelled, cancelling. Paddle, paddled, paddling. Sail, sailed, sailing. Funnel, funneled, funneling. Control, controller, controlling. Peel, peeled, peeling. Compel, compelled, compelling. Feel, feeling, feeler. Boil, boiled, boiler. Propel, propel, propelled, propelling. See learning about language. Correcting statements. Here are some statements made by the hitchhiker. Correct the mistakes and rewrite the sentences. A. We was caught good and proper. We were caught good and proper. B. They don't put nobody in the click for speeding. Nobody, they don't put anybody in the clink for speeding. See, but it don't pay to tell everything to a cooper. But it doesn't pay to tell everything to a cooper. The you writes really is noisy. You writers really are noisy. E. Nobody's checking up on me. Nobody is checking up on me. F. That's why I has to be extra careful. That's why I have to be extra careful. G. I never take nothing from a loser. I have take anything from a loser. H. Nor from poor people neither. 2. Rewrite the following sentences by using used to. A. There was a time when I was a good cricketer. So there was a time when I used to be a good cricketer. B. Years ago he lived in that village. Years ago he used to live in that village. C. Wasn't she a famous film star before the war? Didn't she used to be a famous film star before the war? D. Rahim was an active member of the club in his younger days. Rahim used to be an active member of the club in his younger days. E. Were they not living near Multan some years ago? Used they not to live near Multan some years ago? F. Was he not a regular customer at one time? Used not he to be a regular customer at one time? G. I was fond of eating huge meals in school. I used to be fond of eating huge meals in school. H. Did you never ever visit your cousins when you lived in Lahore? Didn't you ever used to visit your cousins when you lived in Lahore? Thanks for listening. For new videos, don't forget to subscribe my channel. And if you like my videos, please share and like.